This is Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing. You are watching Sporting Icons. You don't need to be anywhere else.
Okay, so Iron Mike Tyson, the baddest man on the planet at one time, has made a return to the Joe Rogan podcast. Now, Iron Mike Tyson, legend of the boxing world, of course, former undisputed world heavyweight champion, been in some absolute super fights. He really has. Many people love Mike Tyson for what he's done in the sport of boxing. Many people don't like Mike Tyson because of his out of the ring antics, shall we say. Not something I'm going to be talking about in this particular video. Anyway, his return to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is a legend here on YouTube, across social media, currently with Spotify, I think it's called. Not a platform I'm too familiar with, but I will check it out. But I love Joe Rogan's stuff. I really do. I love a lot of his videos with Bob Lazar, with Mike Tyson, of course, previously, and many other different kinds of topics that Joe Rogan will talk about. I love conspiracies, the history of the planet and all the kind of evolutionary changes. Joe Rogan's a very, very intelligent guy and gets some quality guests on. I've been hooked on his shows for a long, long time. I like Joe Rogan a lot. But for those of you who watch Joe Rogan as well, you will also know what I'm about to tell you, that when it comes to boxing, you couldn't really call him an expert, but he will know enough to hold a conversation. He will, okay? Now, when it comes to, say, the UFC, for example, of course, he can hold a full podcast just talking about the UFC, of course, because he works with and for the UFC, color commentary, punditry work, all that kind of stuff. So he knows all that kind of stuff. He can break down stuff that I wouldn't even look at, okay? But in some ways, it's almost like a comparison. Me talking about UFC, MMA, I could do videos to make it look and sound like I know what it is I'm talking about. But when it comes to boxing, of course I do. It's natural. With Joe Rogan, it's opposite. Okay? It really is. Now, I'm not going to say Joe Rogan don't know anything about boxing. Of course he does. Of course he does. But he will know, I think, a lot about maybe Muhammad Ali. He'll know a lot about Mike Tyson. He'll know about Duran and Hagler. The kind of historical kind of fights, the big fights and what have you. He will know a lot about those kind of eras. Today's boxing, not so much. Okay? As I said, he can probably hold a conversation with it. And when it comes to Anthony Joshua, I've always got the impression that Joe Rogan doesn't really either like or rate Anthony Joshua too much. But again, a lot of that is down to because he doesn't know too much about this particular era of boxing. He'll probably watch some of the big fights, and that'll be about the extent of it. With Joe Rogan, as far as I understand it. So when he sees that Anthony Joshua lost to a fat Mexican in Andy Ruiz Jr., that's his judgment on Anthony Joshua. And we are going to talk about what Mike Tyson said, and we're going to break down a bit of Anthony Joshua's resume to have a bit of a clearer understanding of what it is that I'm talking about in this particular video and Mike Tyson. But Joe Rogan, of course, he's also had previous guests on there like Shannon Briggs. That was a great podcast. Tyson Fury's been on his podcast before. Deontay Wilder has been on his podcast before. So again, he's going to have his head filled with spun narratives. Obviously because Joshua is an enemy of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. Enemy, strong, maybe, rival. Okay, so again, they're going to be spinning certain narratives with Joe Rogan talking about Anthony Joshua. So that'll be the impression Joe Rogan gets. Anyway, so Mike Tyson, he made a return to Joe Rogan and of course was speaking about Anthony Joshua, and probably took a bit of a slash in the coffee of Joe Rogan. I said, I haven't seen this particular podcast. Okay, so I've only seen the quotes. And this is what Mike Tyson had to say. Anthony Joshua's no walkover. It's just that for some reason, I don't know, we expect a lot from Joshua. I guess maybe because English people are so behind him, we get caught up in the bandwagon too. Americans expect a lot out of Joshua. With the Alexander Usyk rematch, Joshua can do so much. That's why he's never a lost hope. He's dangerous, is Joshua, because he's still effing learning. Joshua needs to pick up the pace just a little. He's got so much damn potential. Mike Tyson's statement on Anthony Joshua. Now, there's a lot of things that he said in those short couple of clippets there, which is, he is correct. Anthony Joshua has a lot of potential. Now, he's only had 26 professional fights. He really has. So he's been fast-tracked, considering his last 10, maybe 11 fights have all been world title fights. He was world champion on his 16th professional fight. So where a lot of fighters like Wilder, for example, especially Wilder, Tyson Fury, what were they doing when Joshua became world champion on his 16th professional fight. What were they doing in 16 fights? They were taking learning fights. Joshua was thrown in at the deep end and has had to be swimming ever since. So the likes of Fury, the likes of Wilder, and many other fighters, of course, use those kind of early fights, those early years, as a way to practice new things that they've learned in the gym on said opponents that, of course, they're going to beat, okay? Unfortunately for Wilder, he was too busy knocking a lot of them out, so he wasn't really learning too much other than he can punch a bit, okay? We'll punch a lot. But with Joshua, listen, in his 15th fight, he took on Dillian Whyte. Tyson Fury has only just fought Dillian Whyte, okay? Yes, Dillian Whyte has fought both Joshua and Tyson Fury, for those of you who don't know. Other than Vladimir Klitschko, he's the only person I believe who has done so. Now, when it comes to his world title, of course, he defeated Charles Martin, who was undefeated at the time. A Charles Martin who was IBF world champion. You could call him a paper champion if you like, that's absolutely fine. But he's undefeated. And I remember a lot of people saying that this is too early for Joshua. People like Lennox Lewis and that were saying that. You become world champion, you get a target. Your learning fights are done. Okay, going forward, that's what you do. Okay, and Charles Martin has only just had a fight with Luis Ortiz. Luis Ortiz, who took Wilder life and death. And he had Luis Ortiz down. He never once even landed a punch on Anthony Joshua. Okay? That's how Joshua became world heavyweight champion in his 16th professional fight. As I said, what was Fury doing? What was Wilder doing? Well, they were doing the right things. They were learning their craft, okay? In his next fight, he fought Dominic Brazil, who was undefeated. Big puncher. Joshua took him out. It wasn't so long ago, Wilder fought Dominic Brazil after Joshua done it. But Wilder done it on, what was it, his 42nd or 43rd fight or something like that. Joshua done it on his 17th professional fight. So if it's good enough for Wilder in 40-odd fights, it should be good enough for Joshua in his 17th fight. But he didn't get any credit for that. He didn't get any credit for the Charles Martin win or the Dominic Brazil win. Likewise, should he get any credit for Eric Molina? No, not really. Again, Deontay Wilder fought Eric Molina, and Eric Molina had Wilder on Bambi legs. He was doing a silly little dance, wasn't he? But still, should Joshua get credit for Molina as a world champion? No. But as an opponent for only his 18th professional fight, yeah, why not? But then, of course, he fought Vladimir Klitschko in his 19th professional fight, 90,000 at Wembley Stadium. He set a new record. He broke Carl Froch's record by 10,000. Anthony Joshua's 19th professional fight. All of this is off the top of my head, by the way. I have no notes and bullet points in front of me. But it was a great fight. It will go down as a classic fight, fight of the year, fight of the decade for a heavyweight and all that kind of thing. It was that kind of fight. Vladimir Klitschko, did he come off a loss? Yes, 18 months beforehand to Tyson Fury. Was he just sat on the couch scratching his balls, waiting for the Anthony Joshua fight? No, of course not. Klitschko went through quite a few training camps, most notably to try and get the Tyson Fury rematch. Ultimately, ended up fighting Anthony Joshua, okay? But that kind of situation up to the Vladimir Klitschko fight propelled Anthony Joshua to not only be a credible pay-per-view fighter. Listen, his first fight as pay-per-view was against the undefeated Dillian Whyte at the time, and he's been pay-per-view ever since. So he's been thrust into the spotlight. He's been thrown to the wolves. And if you look at Joshua's resume, he has fought more top 10 rated WBC opponents than a Wilder and a Fury combined, even though them two were going the WBC route. Joshua's not WBC, he's the other organizations. Fought more top 10 rated Ring Magazine fighters. But yet Joshua has a poor resume. Joshua's no good. Why? Because he got beat up by Andy Ruiz Jr. in the first fight. Now, for those of you who've been with me for quite some time, you probably remember on the lead up to that fight, obviously it was a late replacement for Big Baby Jaron Miller, who tested positive for PEDs. I said that might be the wrong kind of opponent. Don't write Andy Ruiz Jr. off. Andy Ruiz Jr.'s hand speed is phenomenal. Don't just look at him as to how he is, this little fat Mexican kid. Don't be looking at him that way. He's a legitimate fighter. Legitimate, dangerous. But he come unstuck. Joshua made a mistake. He got clipped. Heavyweight division. Okay, it happens. In the rematch, of course, he danced rings around Andy Ruiz Jr. kept him at range, and people want to make excuses. Well, Andy Ruiz Jr. didn't train, didn't do that. Didn't he? Didn't he really? Or that was just an excuse? Probably just an excuse, I think. Okay, but still, say Tyson Fury, he gets a whole lot of credit for the Vladimir Klitschko fight, and rightfully so, but Anthony Joshua, he don't get credit for doing the same thing. Just boxing his way to a victory. He was running around in the fight. He fought scared. See, people spin narratives. Why? Because they don't really know too much about boxing. And that's what it is. Again, Joshua has also unified, again, not only with Vladimir Klitschko, but unified with an undefeated Joseph Parker at the time, who was a WBO World Heavyweight Champion. So Joshua has a very good resume. He fought a Carlos Takam along the way. Again, a very solid opponent. And it wasn't long ago, Joe Joyce fought him. In fact, that was Joe Joyce's last fight. But that was a decent win for Joe Joyce, even though Carlos Takam had Joe Joyce hurt at times and was winning that fight up until Joe Joyce stopped him, where arguably the referee stepped in too early, according to some people. Okay? But it's good enough for Joe Joyce, but Anthony Joshua fought him, he's no good, even though Carlos Takam, he's been in there with a Povetkin, he's been in there with a Joseph Parker and many others. Joshua also fought Povetkin. Povetkin is a huge knockout artist, always has been. A top-rated fighter for the best part of 10 years. His only loss up to that point was to Vladimir Klitschko, where he took Klitschko to points. But he knocked out Povetkin. He's the first person to knock out Povetkin. Oh, well, Povetkin's old. Povetkin's no good. Oh, okay, he's no good. Check out his resume if Povetkin's no good. But yeah, it's good enough for, say, Hughie Fury to fight Povetkin, and it was. I enjoyed that fight, by the way, and I recognise that was a dangerous fight for Hughie Fury. But that's okay. But Joshua doing it, it's not okay, is it? Kubrat Pulev. It's not okay for Anthony Joshua to have his IBF mandatory against Kubrat Pulev. Even though Pulev had, again, only lost one fight, and that was to Vladimir Klitschko. But Joshua does it, Pulev's old, Pulev's no good, Pulev this, Pulev that. Again, Pulev defeated Hughie Fury. Hughie Fury I rate highly, and I do believe he will be world champion one day, by the way. Again, just my opinion. And did I say Hughie Fury will be world champion again? Maybe I did, maybe I didn't, I don't know. But I believe he will be world heavyweight champion one day. Now, his last fight, of course, he lost to Alexander Usyk. Okay, is there any kind of shame in him losing to Alexander Usyk? Alexander Usyk, former undisputed cruiserweight world champion. Between cruiserweights and heavyweights, not a huge amount of difference. Not a massive amount of difference. These are big guys. These are big lumps. These people punch very, very hard. But Usyk, he went to the different countries. Okay, he went away to other countries to dethrone world champions. He won the World Boxing Super Series. He became undisputed world heavyweight champion. World cruiserweight champion. He's a pound for pound fighter. So, but yet people want to spin the narrative how Anthony Joshua is no good because he lost to Alexander Usyk. Well, so would most people, and a lot of people are heavily favouring Alexander Usyk to defeat a Tyson Fury. I don't agree with that narrative personally. I think Tyson Fury beats him because he's so much bigger and he's fast and he's skillful and he's very elusive to keep him behind the jab. But again, that's just my opinion. I'd like to see the fight, okay, to find out for sure. But for Joshua to lose to Usyk, Joshua was exposed. These are the kind of things, these are the kind of narratives that spin around with Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua has been fast-tracked. He hasn't had these learning fights that other people have. So when Mike Tyson says that he's dangerous, but he's still learning, yes, he is still learning. He's learning on the job the hard way. And you know what? He's going to take bumps along the road. Joshua isn't going to go, you know what, I'm going to go fight some journeymen, some gatekeepers to keep active. Because Joshua is one of these kind of people that people will say, well, we want Joshua to fight this person, that person, that person. He does. Yeah, but that person's no good now. But you were calling for it beforehand. But suddenly now he's no good because Joshua fought him. Joshua was even offered Deontay Wilder $100 million for 2 fights for undisputed. Who turned it down? Wilder turned it down, with the first fight being in America. So Wilder had home advantage in that. Wilder turned it down because he wanted to take a less lucrative fight against a fat, out of shape Tyson Fury at the time. That's the route he wanted to go down. And then go fight a Luis Ortiz rematch that nobody was asking for. A dominant Brazil. And this is what Wilder was doing. But yet, Wilder is so much better and would definitely knock out Anthony Joshua. Well, it's a shame he didn't have that same confidence as a lot of people, isn't it? When it comes to Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua has offered Tyson Fury the fight before. On a couple of occasions, Tyson Fury turned it down. Originally, when Tyson Fury didn't have a belt, he had this lineal belt, for whatever that means, offered Tyson Fury 40%. Fury turned it down. More recently, he offered Fury 50%. Everything was done. Saudi Arabia, mega money, 100 million each, well, 75 million each for the first fight, 100 million each for the second fight. Even more so for the winner because of the 60-40 split for the winner in the rematch. Fury didn't do it because he didn't want to pay Wilder the 20 million step aside. Not my opinion, Tyson Fury's words, not mine. Wilder wanted 20 million to step aside, according to Tyson Fury. So unless, of course, Tyson Fury is lying about it, hey, what can we do? But Joshua tried. It's not like Joshua's avoiding these people, not at all. When Joshua fought, say, Charles Martin, for example, that's a fight that Wilder could have done for a unification because it's an in-house PBC fight. Didn't want to do it. Didn't want to do it. As in Wilder didn't want to do it. Well, Joshua done it. Oh, well, Charles Martin's no good. These are the narratives, unfortunately, when it comes to this particular era's boxing fans. If you don't like Anthony Joshua, you'll spin certain narratives, okay? But listen, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. What Mike Tyson is saying there is absolutely correct. People do expect a lot from Joshua. But unfortunately, whatever it is Joshua does, it's never good enough for some people. It really isn't. But anyway, what Joshua needs to do is concentrate on his rematch with Alexander Usyk, all going well. But again, even if he defeats him, there's going to be a lot of people out there not giving him credit. There really isn't. So anyway, that's my thoughts on this whole situation. You drop me yours, click thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you on the next video.